All right, guys, welcome back to Locked Up with David Matlock, the safe space for the sports nerd. And today we'll be talking about the Atlanta Hawks making some serious coaching changes and the future of the team. All right, now, Lloyd Pierce was fired on March 1st, I believe, my birthday. It's a grim birthday present. I don't want anybody to lose their job, but I believe this was the right decision. Travis Slink fired Lloyd Pierce. And now, Lloyd Pierce, he seems like a great stand up guy and everything. But, it was time. After watching the Hawks play, we have so much young talent. And I think the guy, he was originally brought on as the developmental coach for the young guys that they were going to bring in. And he was supposed to be the young, fresh voice to mesh with the young guys. And I just feel like it was never really a good fit from the beginning, there's The Athletic has a lot of great articles kind of detailing sort of the relationship. And I mean, you have to kind of balance out, especially with sports journalism, because there's not a ton of verification for everything. You got to wonder when people are blowing smoke up your ass. But I definitely think that they're pretty spot on with a lot of people were not really in Lloyd Pierce's corner during this. And, uh, and I think the obvious one is Trae Young. Trae Young was pretty vocal about his problems with him. But I mean, you look through some of the things that they were saying about Lloyd Pierce, and it was like he wasn't very approachable. He was very hard nosed. And I think there's an interview with Schultz on The Athletic that kind of outlines this. I mean, he says that he doesn't really take blame for losses because he doesn't feel like he has to prove himself to the media. But it's just kind of like, you're the coach for like, you're accountable to the fans. Like, you're not talking to the media. The media are literally just the vocal piece for the fandom. Granted, it can be misconstrued, but like, you have a responsibility to say to the fans why we lost this game, and you have a responsibility to take blame upon yourself. And I definitely think, from what I've read, it's pretty apparent that he didn't necessarily always take responsibility. And like, there's respect to be had for somebody who's willing to stick to their guns and willing to kind of have their way of doing things. But it's like, you aren't there yet, bro. You are not Popovich. Like, you really need to be catering to these guys. And yet again, another Athletic piece I thought was pretty telling. It was a joint piece by Kirshner, Amick, and then David Aldridge. Aldridge is a legend, and they're just, it was, if you, I would say give it a read, because it really does just outline how Lloyd Pierce was kind of, you kind of have a guy who's getting his first head coaching role, and he's like, got to have the new sheriff in town type of mentality, and he just took it to the extreme. And like, he had said comments about John Collins when they brought them on about not making plays for John Collins, and apparently he said to John Collins that he was selfish for wanting plays run for him. Like, oh, sorry, he one of our most talented offensive players wants some plays dedicated to him. That's absolutely ridiculous to me. Like, again, we have to wonder how much of this is just smoke being blown up our ass here, but I wouldn't put it past Lloyd to be saying all of that. And again, Trae Young, like, Trae Young is what Trae Young is. Like, you can make your criticism about Trae Young's lack of playing defense, but you have to accept that Trae Young is an offensive force that you have to unleash if you want to get full value out of Trae Young. And it's like, Lloyd is forcing him to be solely a facilitator, especially in those losses. Like, I mean, granted, Trae was struggling, and there was time Trae had the wrist injury, and there was definitely there is blame to be put on Trae here. But it's like, you have to let this guy unload from half court sometimes. Otherwise, you don't get the full value of Trae Young. Like, you have to let Steph take about 23s a game. And it's not because, oh, you're all about inefficient basketball and just letting a guy do whatever he wants. But the full value of Steph Curry is his ability to unleash a barrage of threes on you. The full value of Trae Young is him having the ball in his hands and being able to take wild shots people wouldn't normally take, because it forces the defense to come up past the 3-point line to guard him. And now, I mean, Lloyd knows this. Like, I'm not saying Lloyd doesn't know basketball, but it's just kind of like you have to let these guys play. And especially Cam Reddish was even saying he felt like his growth was stunted. Like Cam Reddish, who you ask anybody around basketball, high school basketball, college basketball will always say Cam Reddish is the most talented guy from his class. Like, hands down. There was a poll that came out when they said who would have a better career in the class that Zion was in, like all these guys with RJ Barrett. And who was the one that all the players voted to say would have the better career? It was Cam. So, like, Lloyd, I appreciate his time here, but it's like, you were supposed to be the developmental coach, and if you're a developmental coach, you're supposed to be open to new ideas. You're supposed to be adaptable. You're supposed to be tough, but you're not supposed to be a hard ass. And that's exactly what he was while he was a coach. And if you're going to be a hard ass, you need to have a good system. I cannot tell you how many times I've watched Hawks basketball of us swinging the ball around the killer and then just shooting a three. Like the offense was basically just drive and kick threes the whole time. Like, I mean, there'll be a couple pin downs, like, but there's not a ton of movement. It's Trae Young was the offense. That was the offense. And so when a guy like Lloyd Pierce wants to criticize Trae Young so heavily, it's like, bro, he's the one making your offense look good right now. Like, I don't have too much vitriol against Lloyd because I think Lloyd's probably a stand-up guy. And I don't want to try to like alienate anybody here. And like, I don't want to, because I'm not close to the situation, but I'm close in the sense of I was a fan watching this crap go on for too long. And if you're going to anger our two biggest stars, you better have a damn good reason for doing it. And like this, it's just things like he'd said off the court. He didn't like how Trae Young drew fouls. Sorry, that's how the game works. I mean, have you watched James Harden? I don't know what to tell you. Like, Steve Nash complained about Trae Young saying, that's not basketball. You have James Harden on your team. I don't care. Who cares? If it works, it works. And I think results is what matters. And when I talk about results, look at Rick Carlisle talking about, he made a statement saying, look at all the change that Lloyd Pierce did for Georgia politically. Okay, politics aside, I don't care about your politics at this point. This is a business. And like the political change that Lloyd was a part of, kudos to him for working on that. But quite frankly, your job is to be a coach. I am not going to give you, like, do you want a cookie for doing this? Like, good on him. I'm not saying anything against that. This is not a political stance. This is not anything political. My thing is, you can say all you want, but when a guy is 63 and 120 in 2.5 seasons, he's got to go. Like, there's no exception for that, quite frankly. And then you get him making these braggadocious statements like last year saying, we'll definitely be in the playoffs. And Travis Slink was like, whoa, hey, like you're putting us out there right now. Like you're putting us in a difficult position. And it's just kind of like, I didn't really like how he handled media. He would criticize guys like, okay, be critical, but it's like it's being a hard ass constantly. And it's like, you're a part of this. You're a part of this organization here when you're talking to the media. And this is why I think the McMillan hire was very solid, because I don't think Nate McMillan was gonna be hired solely to be an assistant coach. Like, let's be real here. A guy who's got the record and experience that he does, he's definitely, Lloyd was on the hot seat for a long time. I mean, especially seeing how lackluster the offense would look, just how lackluster the team would look. They definitely, Lloyd had to produce, and especially in the first half of the schedule was way easier, because I'm telling you right now, we've got some tough games coming up. And there was a 4-game stretch where we lost to the Cavaliers, the Knicks, and then the Hornets back to back. And granted, the Hornets have been balling out this year, but come on, like you lose 4 in a row to those teams, like especially with the money they spent, like you gotta go. Like it's just how it is. And I think this was always the plan. Like Lloyd was always sort of the transitionary guy. I'm just disappointed that this transition where it was supposed to be all about development really turned into him kind of alienating a lot of these guys. Like, I really don't like that. And it's like Trae Young is the big name, John Collins, like especially in a contract year, and now it's looking like the bet he's making on himself not taking that $90 million contract extension might work out because the market right now is not that great, and we're gonna have to be playing catch up in that relationship because Lloyd definitely damaged that. But I'm glad we made the decision when we did. So now the second half of the season, we're gonna have to be on our stuff, man. Because all right, so the next 5 games I think are probably the most manageable, and it's still pretty tough. So we're gonna be at Toronto after the All-Star break. Then we have Sacramento at home, Cleveland at home, Houston at home, and then at OKC. That's probably the easiest stretch of games we're gonna have for about 2 months. Well, not 2 months, for about a month and a half. Because then we have an 8-game road trip. And I'm telling you, when I say about 80% of these teams are over 500, I'm not. All right. So the first game at LA versus the Lakers, at LA versus the Clippers, at Sacramento versus the Kings, at Golden State, at Denver, at Phoenix, at San Antonio, at New Orleans. These are hard games, man. Like, I don't think if Lloyd, after his road trip where we dropped like 4 in a row and then McMillan took over, he had to go. Like, that was just not going to work out. And we're in a tough stretch of the season, man. Like, I think there's a level of there's definitely a level of sympathy we need to have for Lloyd because injuries were terrible for us this year. And there has to be some blame put on Travis too. I was high on these signings, but now looking back on it, I'm like, we dedicated a lot of money to a lot of guys who are not very reliable. I mean, we're giving, I think, Rondo about $7.5 million a year. It's like, come on, man. That's Rondo is not, and he's like, and we're about 14 points worse when Rondo's on the floor. Chris Dunn hasn't even played. Chris Dunn's not getting that much money, but Danilo Gallinari, he's finally starting to get a little more production. We're starting to use him a little more. McMillan has been using him a bit more, but he is just a sieve on defense. And then you look at Okongwu. He was hurt at the beginning of the season, but he's starting to get minutes. I'm really excited to see what he looks like. DeAndre Hunter's been out. Cam's been out. Bogdan is just now getting back. I mean, this is like Lloyd definitely had some tough stretches to work with, but I don't think that excuses the fact that we had very winnable games. Like, we had some very close games that we managed. I mean, when we're in the clutch, we are terrible. Like, we were so bad in the clutch. I mean, and also the blame has to be on Trae Young here. I mean, he shot 38.5% and 20% from 3 on 9 turnovers and 13 assists whenever in there in late game situations, which I think, according to the article I read, it was about when it's about a couple, like 2 or 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, like the decision time of the game. And he hasn't really been performing, but of course we know it's because they're trapping him when he crosses midcourt. And not having those guys who are hurt to kind of pick up the slack in those moments is definitely difficult. But I think Nate McMillan is a much better guy going forward to handle this team. The win we had versus Miami was a very, very commanding win. We dominated the boards. We played great defense. Granted, Jimmy Butler wasn't playing, so that really could have changed the flow of the game. Like, it's a 14-point win. It was 94-80, but he could swing that game about 20, 30 points by his defense and his offensive production. But again, we will take a win. It's going to be interesting to see how McMillan and Trae Young's relationship goes going forward because Trae Young has a lot of respect for McMillan. So it'll be interesting to see how a positive relationship could translate to on-court production. All right, so in conclusion, we kind of knew this was going to happen. We knew Lloyd was going to be fired. From a quote, he said to The Athletic in an interview, "Travis is going to fire me one day, and do you know what I'm going to say? The guy gave me a great opportunity in life. Do you think I'm going to be pissed? He's damn near my best friend." Like, so Lloyd even knew it was going to happen. Travis knew it was going to happen, and the players were advocating for it. So I I hate it for him. I wish him the best of luck. I hope he gets another job because, I mean, he's young. Like, he has a lot to learn. Like, he can definitely learn from being a hard ass is not necessarily the best way going forward. But it just wasn't working for us, man. And I'm very glad that they were able to pull the trigger. Unlike some teams I am very familiar with, like, God, we keep a guy for 2 years after just blowing loads all over the place. Just horrible. But thank you for staying with me, chatting Atlanta Hawks basketball. I'm true to Atlanta, love this team, and I can't wait to see what they do going forward. Check out the podcast link down below. Me and Carlos talked about some basketball and some new NBA trading cards, digital trading cards that have been coming out. It's been going on for a while, but I'm just now getting on it, and I think it's really interesting. So why don't you give that a listen, and thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and this has been Locked Up with David Matlock.